Chief, I think you're up first.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to York Regional Police Headquarters. As the Chief of York Regional Police and the current President of the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, I'm pleased to act as your host here today. Allow me to introduce the speakers. The Honourable Dominic LeBlanc, Minister of Public Safety, Democratic Institutions and Intergovernmental Affairs. The Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario. The Honourable Arif Virani, Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of Canada. The Honourable Michael Kerzner, Solicitor General of Ontario. And the Honourable Leah Taylor-Roy, Member of Parliament for the riding of Aurora, Oak Ridges and Richmond Hill. A warm welcome to all of you. Special thanks to the Honourable Doug Downey, Attorney General of Ontario, the Ontario Provincial Police Commissioner, Tom Carrick, and all of the local MPs, MPPs, and members of the York Regional Police Services Board also joining us here today. Police services across Ontario remain grateful for the funding provided by the federal and provincial governments for the initiative to take action against gun and gang violence. This significant investment in community safety has allowed and will continue to allow police services to address specific issues in all of their communities and to collaborate with each other to tackle the violent crime trends and many of our services are currently experiencing. And these issues are the proliferation of illegal guns, not only in York Region but in all Canadian communities, is having a significant impact on public safety. We've seen alarming increases in the number of illegal guns smuggled into Canada from the U.S. in recent years. You only have to look back at the tragic deaths of Canadians, including on-duty police officers, by armed offenders in the last 18 months. Add that to the rising number of firearm seizures by police every day, as well as constant reports of armed violence to truly understand the impact that we're discussing here today. In collaboration with our law enforcement partners, we continue to target these criminal enterprises to effectively disrupt and dismantle gun and gang and drug trafficking networks. We work every day to keep criminal organizations and their illegal activities out of our neighbourhoods in an effort to reduce gun and gang violence across our province. These groups bring unwanted criminal elements into our communities, resulting in the rash of violent carjackings across the GTA and beyond, the massive increase to auto theft, which we continue to battle every day. In fact, Interpol recently named Canada a new hotspot on the global wave of auto theft. A dubious distinction, and certainly not a place we want to be. Other areas we know that are in need of additional funding supports include intimate partner violence, human trafficking, and child exploitation, to just name a few. Funding will enable additional supports for victims of crime in collaboration with our community partners, as well as providing tools and resources to deploy our frontline officers where and when they are needed most. We are sincerely grateful for the support. I can assure you that York Regional Police and all police services benefiting from this funding will continue to advance innovative solutions to these crime trends. And I'm proud to see the federal and provincial governments working together to ensure all of our communities are safe. And now I'll ask the Honourable Minister LeBlanc to please come to the podium to deliver his remarks. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chief, Premier Ford, Solicitor General Kerzner, my colleague Leah Taylor-Roy, and my colleague, the Attorney General of Canada, Minister of Justice, Arif Virani. We're very happy to be here with you, and Chief McSween, thank you to you and thank you to your colleagues here at the York Regional Police Force for welcoming us at your headquarters, but more importantly for the remarkable work that you do and the women and men who serve with you do to keep the York region safe and to make a contribution vitally important to public safety across our country. And for that, we thank you very much. As I mentioned, I'm very happy to be here, obviously, with our colleagues from the Ontario government, with Premier Ford, of course. but with my colleagues in the House of Commons, Leah Taylor-Roy, in whose constituency we are today, but my colleagues Francesco Cerbera and Tony Van Byen, thank you very much for the work you do on this important issue and for the country as well. Over the last number of months, I have had many conversations with our partners in the Government of Ontario, with my colleagues in the Ontario caucus, about public safety issues that the Chief referenced a moment ago, and particularly about the increasingly alarming issues around auto theft. Premier Ford and I speak often about these issues and how the Ontario government and the Government of Canada can collaborate as effectively as possible in tackling crime issues that are understandably of great concern to the people of Ontario, and also support the women and men who work in our law enforcement in doing the difficult and dangerous work that people depend on. And Premier, it's a privilege for me to be with you today. It's the first time I've had an opportunity to participate in a formal announcement with you, Premier Ford, and I'm very privileged to be here, but I'm also privileged to say that the Government of Canada is extremely fortunate to have a partner in the Government of Ontario that wants to work in a constructive and collaborative way on issues so important to people in this province. Here in the York region and in many big cities across the country, auto theft is a growing problem and one that's increasingly violent as well. Le vol de véhicules a des répercussions sur les familles canadiennes et devient de plus en plus une source de revenus pour le crime organisé qui vend ses voitures volées et utilise les bénéfices pour financer d'autres activités illégales. Nous sommes tous d'accord sur la nécessité d'agir et sur la nécessité de le faire en partenariat. Cela commence ici même, dans nos communautés, en appuyant le travail extraordinaire des policiers et leurs efforts en matière de prévention aussi. Les gangs et les groupes criminels qui commettent ces crimes recrutent souvent parmi les jeunes, et j'en ai discuté hier soir avec le Premier ministre Ford, et nous avons le devoir de veiller à leur offrir dès le départ un chemin différent et plus prometteur dans la vie. En même temps, nous devons soutenir la capacité de nos forces de l'ordre à lutter contre la criminalité. Et c'est précisément qu'est-ce que nous faisons ce matin. So therefore, I'm very happy to announce that the Government of Canada will invest $121 million towards crime prevention and enforcement efforts in cities right across Canada, including right here in the York region. This investment will support efforts to address, obviously, as the Chief noted, gun and gang violence, but it will also support efforts from police officers across the province to deal with the criminal linkages, the organized crime linkages to an increasingly violent and alarming circumstance around auto theft. Building on that work, all of us, the Government of Ontario, the Government of Canada, our municipal partners, have been in regular discussions on ways that we can work together in a more enhanced and effective way. I talked with the Solicitor General about this again this morning. The Premier and I have spoken about it as well. Our government is convening, as you know, a national summit on combating auto theft next week in Ottawa. The Government of Ontario is an extraordinary partner in this work, and it will be an effort for us to further coordinate joint activities, build on joint initiatives that are already underway, but identify, more importantly, other solutions, better solutions where we can work together with industry, with the insurance industry, and obviously with law enforcement personnel across the province of Ontario, around the country. And I'm happy to tell you that the RCMP and Canada Border Services agencies are prepared to increase their collaboration and their investments with partners in the province of Ontario and the province of Quebec to ensure that we're doing everything we can collectively to do this work. So Arif and I and our colleagues are looking forward, Premier, to have representatives of your government and other partners in Ottawa next week. And I think that this is a way that we can double down together on efforts to deal with an alarming and worrisome circumstance that many people talk to all of us about, and they deserve to know their governments are doing everything they can collaboratively together to deal with this problem. And I thank you very much for being here this morning.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Minister LeBlanc, for that introduction and for our discussions over the last little while. I can tell you I'm so thrilled to be back here in Aurora alongside Minister Kerzner, Minister Downey, Deputy Minister Mario Di Tommaso, and our amazing team from York Region, Ministers Mulroney and Lecce, and MPPs Don Gallagher-Murphy, Billy Pang, Laura Smith, and Daisy Way. It looks like we have everyone here. And just before I begin, I want to thank Chief McSwain. Thank you for your leadership here. I want to thank all the frontline officers here today and everyone at York Regional Police for hosting us. I also want to recognize Minister Virani, MP Leah Taylor-Roy, MP Francesco Sabara, and MP Tony Van Byn. York Regional Chair Wayne Emerson and Mayor Maracas, thank you for being a great mayor and always supporting our police, and of course, our great OPP Commissioner Tom Creek, and Mark Baxter from the Police Association of Ontario. Thank you all for joining us today for this important announcement. And friends, it takes all of us working together, our police forces, our frontline officers, our court system, our JPs and judges, community groups, and all levels of government to keep our people and community safe. We each have a role to play. For our part, our government is making the necessary investments to ensure that our police services have the tools and the resources they need. We're getting more boots on the ground across the province. We're expanding the number of recruits that can be trained every year at the Ontario Police College. We added 140 new spots in 2023, and we'll add an additional 420 spots by the end of this year. Another priority of ours is bail reform, and I want to thank the federal government for introducing Bill C-48, which toughens bail conditions for violent repeat offenders. To help do our part, last year our government announced $112 million in funding to strengthen the province's bail system. So high-risk offenders remain in jail, and anyone out on bail follows the rules. We're tackling auto theft head-on with $51 million over 3 years to help police identify and dismantle criminal networks behind auto theft rings, because people shouldn't have to live in fear of their cars getting stolen in the middle of the night or doors being kicked in at their residence, and sometimes at gunpoint. And friends, today's announcement, this landmark deal between Canada and Ontario, is going to enhance our efforts to help tackle gun crime and gang violence in our communities. The $121 million investment over 5 years is going to provide more resources for our police forces. It's going to help disrupt the drug supply chains, stop illegal guns from entering our province, curb the level of auto thefts and carjackings, and put more criminals and thugs behind bars where they belong. Friends, we're doing everything we can to support our police services, from making investments in new technologies and innovative policing initiatives, fighting guns and gangs, to bringing in new recruits. We'll do whatever it takes to keep our people and our community safe. Thank you again to Minister LeBlanc and Minister Virani for your support. Thank you to our policing partners here today, and we look forward to continuing working with all of you to tackle guns, gangs, and auto thefts, including at next week's summit. Thank you, everyone, and may God bless the men and women in uniform, and may God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you. Now I'll pass it over to Minister Virani.
I want to say thank you very much, Premier Ford. I'll just open with quelques petits mots en français comme une ministre au niveau fédéral, juste en termes de saluer et féliciter les hommes et les femmes qui travaillent toujours pour notre sécurité dans nos communautés. And I'm saluting the work of the men and women in uniform who are all around us, who deserve, first and foremost, all of our gratitude for putting themselves in harm's way to keep all of us safe. It's really, really important here in York Region and throughout the province and throughout the country. And I applaud you for the work you do, and I'm grateful for it. I want to acknowledge again the people that are gathered here. As I was listening to the Premier speak about this issue, he talked about this collaboration that's necessary, and he mentioned something, a specific item that we worked on very diligently over the past 18 months, and we got across the finish line, and that was bail reform. And what struck me about bail reform is that you saw unanimity. You saw law enforcement, you saw elected leaders, and we've got everyone from city levels all the way up to the national level here gathered all around us, including many of my colleagues from the federal parliament, Francesco, Tony, and Leah, as well as Dominic. And what we found with that bail reform package is that we all rowed in the same direction with unanimity to get something across the finish line. There's no reason why addressing auto theft can't be a sort of a bail reform 2.0. Sort of a repeat of that very successful model. Because what I'm hearing about is this from many, many sectors. When Dominic and I were with Solicitor General Kerzner and my good friend Doug Downey at a federal provincial territorial conference, this wasn't just being raised by the Ontario representatives. This was being raised by the Quebec representatives. I'm hearing about this in BC. I'm hearing about this at the Port of Halifax. This is truly a national issue. It requires a national response, and that's why I think it's so critical that we're moving ahead with that important summit. The dollars that are being invested are critical, because I think with the dollars that Dominic mentioned, $121 million, really goes to assisting our stable and confident partners that we have in the Government of Ontario in addressing this pernicious issue. And I wanted to take a moment to just say that everything I've learned about this issue has been informed by the officers themselves. So I had representatives of the York Police, I had the Durham Police, the Peel Police, and the TPS all in a meeting in December, and they talked to me about what needs to be done, about the multi-sectoral features of this issue, as was outlined by Minister LeBlanc, but they also talked about the need for addressing this in a manner that looks at it on a zoom out. And what they said to me is that it's all of these different sectors. It's about the responsibility of the auto industry. It's about insurance pieces. It's about looking at the ports. It's about looking at the CBSA. It's about, yes, looking at the criminal code, for which I'm responsible, and I'm very open to looking at the criminal code. They also emphasized to me this aspect of organized criminal behavior and large institutions, national and international in scope, that are actually behind a lot of this theft. And it's really key to understand that when we're looking at this, we do look at it comprehensively. And I want to make sure that Canadians know that right now, as we speak, we've got provisions that deal with money laundering that are on the floor of the House of Commons. That's a bill called C-59. And I would love to see the same type of cooperation we had on bail reform applied to that bill, so we can get those anti-money laundering provisions across the finish line. And I want to end in saying that I'm not just the Minister of Justice and Attorney General who's dedicated to the safety of the communities around this country. I'm also a Toronto MP. And I hear about this very directly from my own constituents here in this part of the country. And what they say to me is that they're scared. They're scared because what once looked like the taking of a fob electronically through a scanning device has now turned into, we're coming into your home to find those keys, we're kicking down your door, as Premier Ford described, and sometimes we're using weapons to obtain that device. That's terrifying for people. It's terrifying for people that may have come to this country escaping trauma or persecution from another part of the world to face that kind of fear in their own homes and the safety of, you know, the place where they should feel safest. That's something that we've got to be dedicated towards addressing. That's what I do as the Minister of Justice. That's what I'm dedicated to do. That's what Doug Downey and I talk about all the time. That's what Solicitor General Kerzner, Dominic LeBlanc are dedicated to do, is keeping our communities safe. We can't have people affected in terms of trauma, in terms of their mental health, or even their affordability in terms of their insurance rates going up. So that's why we're rowing in that same direction. That's why that summit's going to be important. That's why I'm very keen to see so many people here from different levels of government, because this is an issue that is nonpartisan, that we need to work with pace, with efficiency, because we need to get the job done. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Passing it over to my friend Michael Kerzner.
Good morning. Bonjour à tous. It's an honor for me to be here today to echo this important message. And I'd like to start by saying thank you to York Regional Police Chief Jim McSween for hosting us and your unwavering dedication to keeping Ontario safe. Our government knows the effects that gun and gang activity and violent crime have on communities across the province. These acts of criminality are totally unacceptable. In Ontario, our government, led by Premier Ford, knows that people have the inherent right to live safely in their communities, to wake up their kids and loved ones each morning and see them off on their day, and to go to work and to shop and to pray safely, which is why public safety will always be a top priority. The gun, gangs, and violence reduction strategy represents a strategic investment of $121 million that will support targeted funding to help keep Ontario safe. This is a welcome investment in Ontario, as we all know that under the leadership of Premier Ford, our government made a strong commitment to dismantle organized crime, get illegal guns and drugs off our streets, and fight back against the rise of auto theft. We have put criminals on notice, and we will continue putting them out of business. Since the inception of the Guns, Gangs, and Violence Reduction Strategy, we've made investments to help accomplish our goals here in Ontario. Through year one, we were able to support $2.8 million Ontario CCTV grant, which provided funding to 25 policing projects to help protect their communities, as well as a $4 million victim support grant, which will fund 45 police services and OPP detachments in developing projects that support victims and survivors of intimate partner violence, domestic violence, human trafficking, and child exploitation. These successful efforts can be seen right here in York Region at YRP, as they received $200,000 to purchase CCTV cameras. YRP has also received $5 million through the Gun and Gang Specialized Investigation Funding, and a further $1.4 million through the Greater Golden Horseshoe Investigation Fund. These projects support partnerships that establish and enhance intelligence and investigation that target the drivers of gang expansion. And because of our government's sincere dedication to public safety, efforts such as the Provincial Carjacking Joint Task Force has been able to make 89 arrests, lay 554 charges, and recover over 100 vehicles, and we're only getting started. We have seen successes. There is going to be more that we will do, which is why the funding here today and the announcement here today is very much appreciated. And I'd like to reiterate that we are grateful for this support from the federal government and will continue to allocate this funding into programs that help achieve our primary goal of keeping the people of Ontario safe. Our commitment to public safety is absolute and constant, because a safe Ontario is a strong Ontario. Le soutien de notre gouvernement est absolu et sans relâche. Qui dit Ontario sécuritaire, dit Ontario fort. This funding is a vote of confidence that our strategy is working, because we believe in Ontario and we believe in Canada, parce que nous croyons en notre province et en notre pays. At this time, I'd like to call the Member of Parliament for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill, Leah Taylor-Roy, to come to the podium. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Miigwech.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for your words. And I'd like to ask my colleagues, Tony Van Bynen and Francesco Sobera, to join me up here, because we really work as a team in York Region. Come on. And I just want to point out that, you know, there are so many members of Parliament, members of provincial Parliament, mayors, regional representatives here today, which really underscores how important this issue is to York Region and to our communities. So I want to thank you all for being here. And I want to thank Mr. LeBlanc for being here in Aurora at the York Regional Police headquarters, which I'm fortunate to have situated in my riding. And I, along with my fellow York Region MPs, Tony Van Bynen and Francesco Sobera, are very grateful for our government's response to this serious issue that we have been working on with them for a long time. And we want to thank Minister Virani as well Premier Ford, of course, and Solicitor General Kerzner for joining us here. The Investment Minister LeBlanc announced today will support the work of law enforcement to combat crime and keep our communities safe. And we, as representatives here, hear constantly about the challenges, about the thefts that are happening in our communities, and are very concerned about them. You know, I had 2 cars stolen from my front yard, from my driveway, a year ago, Christmas Eve. So firsthand, I understand what is happening. Here in York Region and across Ontario, our police services do incredible work. Their challenge is real, and it takes all of us, all levels of government, and all of us as residents to do what we can to assist our officers in combating this crime. And I really want to thank Police Chief Jim McSween and all the officers and staff that work at York Regional Police for their dedication and their tireless service. I mixed up my notes. but I did want to say that I think our message here today is clear. Our message is that we're doubling down on our efforts to combat crime. We're doubling down on our efforts, working together, all of us together. And we know that we are going to stop this. We're going to stop the people who are feeling that they can join these criminal organizations, that the equation is that they will have an easy win, that they'll be able to take money out of the hands of honest citizens. And we need to make sure that message is heard. We are all working together, we're doubling down, and we're going to stop this. So thank you to everyone here that's working together to make this a reality. And thank you again to our government for this announcement of this great investment.
So we'll now go to questions. On va maintenant passer aux questions. Thank you to our speakers. So if reporters just want to line up behind this mic. Donc, si les journalistes veulent se présenter derrière ce micro-ci, we'll take the first question.
Hi, I have a couple of questions. Number one, is this new money that is being announced today?
Are you asking the federal government?
Oh. Go ahead. Yes, it's part of the Government of Canada had announced an envelope nationally of funding to tackle guns and gang violence focused on organized crime. And we've worked with the Government of Ontario, the Solicitor General's Department, and finalized the contribution agreement that will allow this $121 million to start flowing this fiscal year.
So have you announced the 121 before, or is this the first time it's being announced?
My colleague Marco Mendicino spoke of a national allocation in the budget, I think, of 2022 of money allocated for guns and gang violence across the country. And then we worked with the Ontario government to finalize a contribution agreement based on their priorities, and that work was finished in the last few weeks.
Okay. And why is the announcement being made in York Region?
So the Premier may want to add something, but my colleagues from the York Region and from the Greater Toronto Area have spoken often in our caucus, my colleagues in the Cabinet, about the real threat that auto theft represents for the people of this region, but also for the Greater Toronto Area. We've seen a 50% increase from 2022 in the auto theft in the Greater Toronto Area. We've seen, as the Premier and Arif and the Solicitor General noted, an increase in violence associated with what had been a property crime previously, but is increasingly a source of revenue for organized crime, and increasingly and alarmingly so, a violent crime. So we thought it was important to come where the frontline officers every day are tackling this difficult issue amongst other law enforcement issues, and really draw attention to the work that we can do here in York Region with the Government of Ontario and other policing partners to tackle this increasingly worrisome trend. Premier, did you want to add something?
Sure. Yes, we're seeing crime right across the GTA, no matter if it's York Region here or Durham or Halton or Toronto itself. and we're all coming together at all three levels of government, no matter if it's the region, the province, or the federal government. I have a message to all the criminals. We're coming after you, we're going to catch you, and you're going to jail. Simple as that. We're going to keep you in jail as long as we possibly can. I will not spare one resource to make sure we go after these thugs and make sure that they're going to jail. But it takes a multiple approach from all levels, and I think I mentioned everyone in there, including, and I have a great bunch of respect for our courts, but we can't have JPs letting these criminals out on bail once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. They're kicking in people's doors with guns. I've seen videos. It's unacceptable. We're going after them, and we're going to do everything we can to hold them accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. Thank you, Minister. Just a quick reminder to reporters, just to make sure we can get to as many questions as possible, 1 question and 1 follow-up. Donc, une question, un suivi par journaliste. Merci.
So Richard Southern with City News for Premier Ford. Premier, you spent your political career speaking out against sole-sourced government contracts, yet your government is now handing sole-source deals to Staples and Walmart. My question, why have you had a change of heart on this? Why do you now support sole-source government deals, sir?
Well, thanks for that question, Richard. I know you've been on this like a dog on a bone for the last 3 weeks. But, the people of Ontario love this. Absolutely love it. Not everyone can go to Service Ontario in between 8:30 and 4:30. Now they can go from 7 till 9 o'clock. And by the way, the officials dealt with this. None of us dealt with it. The officials brought this to us, and there was about 12 companies that are looking to do this. It's no different than the federal government for Canada Post and Shoppers Drug Mart. But the good news for the people of Ontario, we're saving $1 million, and we're giving convenience, and we're going to continue doing it right across the province to make sure people have the opportunity that may work during the day, that don't have time to go to Service Ontario, to go to Staples. You know something? I heard from an employee from Staples, and they said their phone's ringing off the hook. They love it. And I love the little clip. Not that I ever watched the news, but they showed me a clip from CP24. Every single person they interviewed was, way to go, keep going. It's for the people. Thanks, Richard.
If you watched our newscast, you would see your minister not being able to answer questions about why Staples is getting taxpayer dollars when they admit they're using it to sell printers. My question, sir, is will you clear the air? Will you release the business case for this today, please?
See, the officials dealt with this, Richard, but I appreciate your passion about this. And I'm just as passionate about serving the people of Ontario, have more convenience for the people there, and saving $1 million. We're going to continue doing this right across the province, just like there's convenience again for Canada Post going into a Shoppers Drug Mart. That's what it's all about. But I do appreciate your concern and your passion. Next question.
Alan Hale from Queen's Park today. It may be a good idea, but why would you not give taxpayers an idea of what they are actually spending and giving to a private company?
Well, we're actually just saving $1 million. But, I find it ironic that if I went out there and talked to the people, are you worried about Staples? Or are you worried about getting your car stolen and your door kicked in? I can assure you, it's the number one issue. One of the number one issues is crime that we're seeing, unprecedented crime in the region of the GTA and Toronto. People are in fear. I've talked to friends that are sleeping with baseball bats beside their bed because someone's going to kick the door in and put a gun to their head and say, hand over your keys. And I encourage everyone to cooperate when that happens and let the police deal with these criminals. That's terrifying. I'm sure you've seen these videos. They're online all over the place, and we're going to put an end to it because we hear people are flying in to our great province from all over the world and certain regions of the world, coming in for 2 weeks, doing a criminal act, breaking into people's houses, and then they hop back on the plane and leave. We're seeing young people coming in, stealing cars in a real bad, heinous way. So I'm done with these guys. They're going to jail. I'm going to use every resource, every single tool under the Solicitor General, Attorney General, and the federal government. And I've mentioned to the federal government, and I know they mentioned it as well, Minister Virani, about changing the criminal code. Why don't we put in grand theft auto? Why don't we put a mandatory sentence? You're breaking into someone's house with a weapon and threatening families, you should be going to jail, no matter what, minimum. And I'm not an expert at it. Throw them in jail for 10 years. I don't care how long it is. I don't want them in our province. Get the heck out of our province if you want to do that way. Be that way, I should say.
For Premier Ford again. Surely you can see that there is a bigger issue here. You have been accused of doing favors for people that you like, whether it's property developers or big box stores. Can you explain to us your state of mind here? Like when you decide to go and do these things and give these perks or these supports to people that you have some sort of affinity to, can you explain how that isn't like helping your buddies or how...
My friend, I don't know where you're going with this, but I think it's absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. I'm focused on running the province, making sure we give excellent service, reducing taxes, putting more money into people's pockets, and increasing services. But I appreciate your comments today. Next question.
Hi, Premier. Siobhan Morris from
Hi,
CTV.
Siobhan.
I'd like the Solicitor General's comments on this as well, but through Freedom of Information data we were able to obtain at CTV, data from last year that showed on an average day 82% of people in Ontario jails were legally innocent, mostly awaiting trial. Does that seem like a good sort of balance in numbers while people are waiting for justice?
I'm going to pass that over to the Solicitor General.
Well, thank you, Premier, and thank you for the question. You know, we have a duty to uphold the decisions of the courts. So we have a responsibility to uphold these decisions. And I can tell you, on any given day, we have tremendous professionals that work in our correctional systems that help keep our province safe. And people are there in the 20-odd jails in Ontario because they are either awaiting trial or have been charged and are sentenced to 2 years less a day. And in the end of the day, it's about public safety. It's keeping those violent and repeat offenders off our streets. It's recovering the autos that have been stolen. And it's creating and it is making sure that we have a community that's safe for everyone.
Just to follow up on the same issue, we have heard that while there's been this focus on special prosecution teams, there's not been an equivalent investment in legal aid and defense. And we're hearing from some experts that that's created an imbalance in the court system. Do you have any plan to regulate or balance that system?
I think maybe the best question should be answered by our Attorney General, Doug Downey. Thank you. And a great Attorney General, by the way. This guy's a champion.
Thank you, Premier. We've invested significantly in legal aid. We've hired hundreds of prosecutors, administrators, court staff, and we've made significant infrastructure investments. So right across the system, we've made sure that it's functioning properly, that we have the resources in the right spots, and that we're achieving success. The 82% that you referenced is partially due to people not being released on bail because of the federal changes that we supported and called for. So we're seeing some successes across the board. Thank you.
Good morning, Sinead Dougal with the Trillium. This is for Premier Ford. Your cabinet minister, Parm Gill, resigned last week. He's the 5th minister you've lost within a year. Should Ontarians be confident in your government when cabinet ministers are jumping ship?
Well, I wouldn't say they're jumping ship. I think the world of Parm, I wish him all the best. He was a federal MP before, and I believe that the people of Ontario have a lot of confidence in us. All you have to do is look at the polls. So thank you for that.
What's your message for any other MPP, any other of your MPPs or cabinet ministers who might be considering joining Pierre Poilievre's team?
Well, my message is to anyone, and no matter when I ran my private company or run the government, you know, no one has a handcuff on anyone, no matter if it's a Liberals, NDP, kind of PCs. I appreciate our team, and to be very frank, I have the best team ever assembled in Ontario, and I'm very grateful to have them and serve with them. And I'll tell you, we're doing an incredible job for the people of Ontario, especially on the economy. We're leading North America in economic growth. This is one stat I love. All the manufacturers in Ontario want to thank you. You created more manufacturing jobs last year than all 50 states combined. That's a pretty staggering figure, and I'm just grateful to have the team that I have.
Hi, Premier. Alison Jones with the Canadian Press. I wanted to ask about international students. Since the federal government announced the cap on student visas, we've heard the universities and colleges in the province raise some pretty significant concerns about it. Have you taken any of those concerns to your federal colleagues? Are you sort of advocating on behalf of Ontario's post-secondary institutions for a delay, a reversal?
Well, first of all, I always say we have the best colleges and universities anywhere in the world. That's honestly, it's one of our #1 selling features when Vic Fideli travels around the world. We always say we have the best talent here. We're there to support our colleges and universities, but we're also there to weed out the bad actors on the private side of colleges. So we're going to be there to support them and help them any way we can.
Yeah, the Auditor General and others have said that part of the reasons the institutions have had to increasingly rely on international student tuition is because of the 10% tuition cut and freeze that your government imposed in 2019 and very low and stagnant funding to the post-secondary institutions. Have you decided yet what you're going to do in response to the Blue Ribbon panel's recommendations, which said you should be raising tuition, but also student aid, and also increasing operating grants?
I just don't believe this is a time to go into these students' pockets, especially the ones that are really struggling, and ask for a tuition increase. We're the only government in the history of this country, in the history of this province, to reduce the tuition by 10%. We're going to work with our colleges and universities to support them any way we can and drive efficiencies throughout the system. You know, there's some classes out there, believe it or not, that have 6 or 7 students. That's unacceptable. So there's areas of improvement, but we're always there to support our colleges and universities because they're the future of this province, the future of manufacturing. And, you know, at one time, the tech sector, you always heard the stories about the folks graduating, the students graduating from Waterloo or U of T that hop on a plane that go to San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley. Well, they aren't doing that anymore. We're actually seeing companies come back to Toronto. We have one of the largest tech sectors in North America. We've seen over a $20 billion investment in tech over the last 2 years. San Francisco Bay Area and Silicon Valley employs about 388,000. Here in Ontario in the tech sector, we employ over 420,000 people. And I always want to say, people talk about AI, artificial intelligence. It was born right here in Toronto at U of T. We have the brightest students anywhere in the world. I'll put our students up against any other students in the world, and I'm so proud of them.
Thank you, Premier. So the last question will go to Jeff Gray from the Globe and Mail.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Premier.
Hi.
Just picking up on the international students question, which we've been following. These private colleges, the bad actors you mentioned, they've expanded a lot on your watch. Do you acknowledge dropping the ball on not keeping a lid on that?
Well, I wouldn't say dropping the ball. Isn't it great that 415,000 students around the world call Ontario a place of home temporarily? What I would have liked to see, these kids graduate, stay here. We were short 360,000 people to fill the jobs. Because I want to remind you, in the last previous government, they lost 300,000 jobs. There's over 700,000 more people working today than there was 5 years ago. We have over 300 positions in every single sector. But do we need to look at it and clean that up? I agree 100%. We need to look at it, and we will clean it up. And Minister Dunlop's doing a great job as the Minister of Colleges and Universities.
And switching back to the crime issue today, if I could, and anyone on the podium there who wants to answer this one, could someone say a little bit about the specific initiatives that this money or other initiatives the police are doing to try and stop auto theft? Like, will this allow more undercover work, more relationships with international police forces or the RCMP to try and stop this, which is really a trans-border problem?
I think there's probably a few people, and if I can call on the chief and even the commissioner. Apologize, I'm catching you off guard, Commissioner, but what the OPP is doing to support the municipal governments, if you want to say a few words, and please feel free to.
Thank you, Premier. Thanks for the question. Well, a lot of what you've said, the funding will go to support a lot of initiatives, to support a lot of those individual items you mentioned. As you've already heard, we have the Provincial Carjacking Task Force that's working in collaboration with a number of the GTA police services as well as the OPP. As you've seen right here in York Region, we had done an initiative a few months ago, called Project Auto Guard. I think a key piece to this as well is the crime prevention component, because, the citizens of the province can take action themselves to protect themselves, to help combat this issue. And I would lastly say the collaboration amongst all police services, amongst all entities that have an intersection on this one critical issue that we're talking about today around carjackings, auto theft, that being the Insurance Bureau of Canada, the auto industry itself, Interpol, the federal government, the provincial government. This is about solving a problem, and I'm confident we can solve this problem if we get all the right people at the table. And on February 8th, I know that is the intent. You've heard from our Public Safety Minister. The intent is for all of us to come together and solve this problem. It's having a direct impact across the province on public safety, and it's definitely having an impact here in York Region. And it's having an impact on officer safety. And I just want to touch on this one component so you know how serious we believe this issue is. A few nights ago, our officers did a takedown, an arrest of a number of people in collaboration with our GTA partners. And some of these bandits are driving intentionally at our officers who are trying to make the arrest. They're young people. They're out there brandishing firearms, doing home invasions, and it's just completely unacceptable to any of us. But we cannot do this alone, the police. We can do our part, and we are doing our part. We can't do it alone. We need collaboration, and we need all partners in all sectors at the table, and I'm confident we can solve this problem and make our communities across the province much more safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. There's not a lot that I can add to the very high-level overview that Chief McSween has provided, other than to say this funding is absolutely critical for law enforcement to continue its collaborative efforts. These are intelligence-informed probes and projects that are primarily focused on public and officer safety. The Chief has highlighted the high risk to our officers who are attempting to stop stolen vehicles on a daily basis across this province with armed offenders who in many cases have kicked doors into residents or taken cars at gunpoint. This takes a great deal of collaboration, and this funding will ensure that collaboration continues. It starts in the GTA with all of the GTA services working in partnership with the OPP and the RCMP under the Provincial Carjacking Task Force. We've got the Organized Crime, Towing and Auto Theft Task Force, which is funded by the Province of Ontario, that looks at major projects that tackles the serious and organized crime networks behind these violent thefts. We're working in collaboration with Canadian Border Services, Port Authority, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Criminal Intelligence Service Canada, and Interpol. And this funding will allow those increased and enhanced enforcement efforts to ensure that we tackle this serious and organized crime problem and improve both officer and public safety. Thank you to both levels of government for your unwavering support and your acknowledgement today of the great efforts that our men and women in uniform put forth to ensure our province is safe and secure. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks, everyone.
So that concludes today's press conference. Thank you for being with us today. Merci de votre présence.